Hey
Everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I got Isaac Barrow here with me today. I'm excited to dig into some of these conversations that we're going to have today, just because Isaac and I have been meeting just over the last couple of weeks, just talking about business stuff, Indy investor stuff, just a couple of different things. So I was like, man, let's just jump on a pod and just talk about this stuff and get it going and things. So Isaac, how's it going, man?
Great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So happy to have you on here. Thanks for joining me. Before we kind of get into the meat of all this thing, give us a little bit of your background on kind of so Isaac with Piedmont Property Management, you guys are crushing it. You're the hot new name in property management right now in Indianapolis and stuff. I gotta say, so doing a great job. I know a lot of investors that are working with you, and you guys are doing a great job in a field that like I want nothing to do with property management. Like property management is like my least favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Even on my team, I delegate that as much as I can and that type of stuff. So you're working in an industry that's known to be pretty tough, and it's a lot of people don't want to do it, and that's why they're hiring property managers to take care of things for them and stuff like that. And you're doing a great job with it. But before we get into kind of some of that stuff, let's give me a little bit of your background. So I know you guys moved out here from the DC area a few years ago and stuff, and Indianapolis is now your home, and we did some deals wholesaling together and things like that. But now you're in the property management. Give us a little bit of your story and how you got into what you're doing today, man.
So yeah, I was born and raised in the DC area in a suburb, like a suburb just outside DC called Silver Spring. Population probably about as big as Greenwood, Indiana. It's like 90,000 people roughly. It was a great place to grow up. I mean, there's a lot to do, very walkable, but just very expensive. And so maybe not the great place to be like a young adult where you're trying to make your way. And my dad was a carpenter, so I always knew maybe a little bit more about like how houses work and how to fix houses up and all that kind of stuff just through being raised by him. I mean, me and him, we built an addition on the house that I grew up in together.
Nice.
So and my brother is super analytical and just genius. And my brother moved out to Indy in 2013. I bought a house that we're actually about to list for sale today. Um,
Nice.
and yeah, I mean, he's lived there for most of the last 9 years. And around 2014, he was like, "Oh, you should come out here." It was funny. Like even before I started doing real estate, he was like, he always for some reason thought I had a good personality for real estate. Um, I don't know why, but he was always saying, "Oh, you should come out to Indy. Like we have a couple rentals. Like you could manage them." Because at the time I was managing like a failing pizza restaurant in Maryland. That was my like level of experience prior to this.
Yeah.
and and basically I came out, I managed a couple rentals, and then obviously not because of me, but the business just started to grow. We started to pick up more rentals. It was a little easier to buy back then. Um, and yeah, before I knew it, I was managing, 57 rentals, which sounds like not much to me now, but like at the time it was like, oh my God, I'm running around constantly. But I learned so much, and we got into wholesaling, and I liked wholesaling, but I always felt management was just more my personality. I For some reason I just liked it more. I'm not much of a salesman.
Yeah.
Not that you have to be necessarily to be a wholesaler, but there's certainly some element of that where you have to have at least somebody on your team who's good at selling, and I'm just not. So I realized pretty quickly like wholesaling's not it for me long term.
Yeah.
And then over time, obviously the market's gone way up. So those houses that we bought in 2015 and 16 and even 17 didn't really make sense to keep. So 2019 we sold a lot, 2020 we sold a couple, 2021 we sold the rest, and now at this point we have like 3 houses left. So obviously it wasn't keeping me as busy even in 2020 and 2021. So it just made sense for me to just get into management on my own. And for, me and Sam, obviously we still work together, but it just made sense for me to do management on my own. And I really didn't anticipate it blowing up into anything. I
Yeah.
honestly thought I can manage for the few of the people I already know. Maybe honestly, the goal in the beginning was to get to like 50 doors. That was like the I would be satisfied with that
Yeah.
kind of. And yeah, it just obviously has ballooned, but that's pretty much my real estate career.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What are some of those things that you learned when you were self-managing those 57 properties and stuff like that, and not really, managing a pizza place and then going into managing, up to 57 doors and stuff like that? What are some of those things that you learned through self-managing those and things? What are some of the things I'm sure definitely are helping you out in your company now and things, but what are some of those top tips?
I would say managing contractors is a big one.
Yeah.
Because some of them have prickly personalities. And so managing contractors, and also just like the technical things like how to screen tenants, how to negotiate lease renewals. Obviously we were self-managing, so I wasn't so much learning how to manage working with different owners, because some of these I owned myself, some of these my brother owned, my dad owned. So it wasn't so much of that, but managing finances, getting good prices, knowing what things. I would say the main thing is like understanding what things should cost.
Yeah.
Is a big one, and obviously it's like they say, yesterday's price is not today's price. So
Right.
some of the stuff we were getting done in 2017 is more expensive now, just because of market factors.
Yep.
But I would say I learned a lot about how to vet a good contractor, how to vet a good tenant, how to, obviously just pricing out rent, pricing out all those kind of things. I mean, people contact me all the time and just ask like, hey, what do you think this house should rent for? I'm thinking about making an offer on it. And I would say a lot of the things I learned just managing myself on a smaller level definitely applied. We didn't really have any employees, so I didn't learn as much about managing employees, but just the technical stuff. I learned a lot from Sam, my brother. He's been an entrepreneur since he was 16 years old. So I learned a lot about just like being business minded, which is not my background at all. I mean, obviously I managed a restaurant, and I learned a little bit about managing people from that. Because we had, any restaurant you work at, you're going to work with a group of wild characters.
That's a great way to put it. There's definitely going to be some characters in a restaurant. So yeah.
So I learned a lot about that through there. But with working with Sam, just like being more business minded and making sure everything is a good deal.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that helps you a lot too. Those lessons that you learn when you're self-managing and just being an investor yourself and looking at it from the landlord side of things too, helping you go here. So, I want to get your take real quick on, obviously with this being the Indy Investor Pod, I want to talk about just like Indy specific stuff right now. When you're talking to, a new client or somebody that's looking to become a landlord here in Indianapolis and stuff like that, is what's kind of your pitch to them a little bit? I know you mentioned before that you're not a sales guy, so I'm not expecting a sales pitch or anything, but what's your kind of go-to when you're explaining to them, like, why should they invest in Indianapolis? Why is it a great place to have some buy and hold properties?
Well, I would say it's very wide compared to a lot of other major cities. So there's a lot of population growth, a lot of job growth. And there's obviously been a lot of rent growth over the years. I mean, the rentals that we owned in 2017, we were getting $750, and now those same places are renting for $1,400 or more. So obviously that is also true in other markets, just because everything's gone up. But I think there's just been a lot of growth in Indy. There's been a lot of there's just been a lot of development. I mean, there are a lot of places within Indy that have completely changed, not even just over the last 5 years, but over the last 10. And I think in a sustainable way. So I would say just a lot of growth throughout Indy, and also some surrounding towns that have grown a ton. Like I think a place like Franklin, Greenwood, Carmel, Fishers. I think there are a lot of places that Indy, when you combine all that, it's a pretty huge population. I mean, it's one of the biggest cities in the country.
Yeah. So, and I think it's not known as that, which is always funny. Like people, I think like a lot of times people come here and be like, oh, I didn't realize it was that big. I'm like, it's like, it's up there. It's in the top 15, cities in the US. We got pro sports teams. It's a big city. So,
I think it's like 12th in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where we're sitting right now. So, yeah, and then you add, I'm out, and a lot of people don't realize too, just like Carmel is the fifth biggest city in like Indiana. Like it's so,
Yeah, yeah,
it's right here with it and stuff too. So the population growth you see in like Whitestown, like you mentioned Franklin, like areas like that. So, a lot
yeah,
of great things going on here.
yeah.
What I'll talk to you about that. You mentioned like before, like some of these properties you were managing that were like paying 750 in rent, now getting like 1400. Like I feel like I know from my standpoint, I'm buying properties higher than I ever have before. I'm selling properties higher than I ever have before. Rent's higher than it ever was before. Like, what's your like is this sustainable a little bit of where some of these rents are, or even to add on to that a little bit, I want to throw this question out to you too. Of like for these landlords, when you're working with them and your clients, of like, hey, we gotta, we got to push this rent to 1,200 when it's it should be like, I don't know, I think it's gonna be like 950, 1,000 when they want to push it, but the prices just in general are being pushed. Like, what's your just general thoughts on that?
I would say I always advise people to have more than one exit strategy.
Yeah.
So even if people say, we need to push rent up to X, Y, or Z, for one, it's got to be backed up by some sort of market factor. Just because, then you probably get into a situation where a house sits a little longer than you want it to. And also, I would say I do believe the market will correct. It's hard to say when, but I don't see it really as sustainable long term. I do think rents will correct, maybe not back to the level, maybe not to the point that Mapleton Fall Creek rentals will be $700 again. But I would say that's always something I urge people to keep in mind. Like, make sure your strategy is aligned with if the market comes down again, because you have to assume it will at some point. if that happens, your strategy isn't underwater, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. If you can afford rent if it's 1,200, but can you still afford it if the rent is 1,000 in 2 years, or if something happens, and looking at that stuff. So yeah, that's a great tip, man.
Yeah, and also just obviously not being undercapitalized, where it's like you could still make money at X amount, and it's like this will work if we can do this or that. That I think is dangerous territory.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I want to ask you too. This is one of my favorite questions to ask, especially with property managers. I know for me, from the wholesaling side, and just somebody that's providing off market, on market properties and stuff like that. Like I always, I'm always interested to talk to other wholesalers, and when I'm talking to clients or customers too that want to buy off of us, I'm always thinking about, man, what questions should they be asking me that they're not? Like, they know I'm going to provide them a property, but like they should be asking me like a couple more questions on how things work and stuff like that. I always think this is interesting from the property management side, because I feel like a lot of people sometimes get into this and they just hear like, hey, I want to work with I want to work with Isaac, or hey, I want to work with Sterling or Alicia or whoever, whatever property manager may be, because they heard somebody else and they're doing a good job for them and stuff, and they just jump on board.
yeah.
I always like to just ask, especially people like you and property managers, like, what are some questions that investors should be asking you when they sit down and have that like get to know you meeting, or you have that like, hey, I want to turn my portfolio, or I want to turn just even one property every year? What are some questions that they should be asking you that maybe some people aren't?
I think people should ask more about like what your staffing setup is like, because I think a big problem for a lot of people, and I see how it happens. It's because it's such like a sliding scale. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, it's kind of easy to become big in property management because there's such a demand for it, and people see it. And, especially if you have maybe a couple of reviews on social media, or a couple of people say, I'm going to give you referrals because you've done a good job for me. It becomes easy to get big. And then before you know it, you're understaffed. So I think people should talk to the owner of the property management company about like, hey, what is your plan if you get to a point where you're too big? And what is your current staffing structure? Like, do you have a general manager? Do you have like a maintenance coordinator? Do you have a leasing agent? How many hours are you working every week? Like that's something I think should be asked, because it's like, like from my shoes, it's like there's some weeks where, especially in the beginning, and I still have those weeks sometimes where it's like, damn, I'm working 80 hours this week.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people, if they asked the owner of the management company, like, what is your actual plan? Like, what is your vision for the business long term? Like, do you want to keep growing? Because I think sometimes these owners, they want to keep growing and they want to ideally keep growing with a property manager. Nobody wants to transition. It sucks. But like they would like, I think it'd be good information for them to know, like, can I grow with you? If I can't, then it's probably not the right fit. So I would say just like getting in more of a business owner to business owner conversation and saying like, okay, what's your plan? What's your staff like? You know, how much have you grown over the last month, over the last 3, 6, 12 months? Just stuff like that. That I think people ask a lot more about stuff that everybody kind of does the same. Everybody does. Everybody markets on the same websites. Everybody uses the same photographers. Everybody uses the same 2 or 3 management softwares. We're all using AppFolio, PropertyWare, or Buildium. Like that's not really telling me what the experience is going to be like. The experience is like, if I email your GM, how fast am I going to get a response? Am I going to know like who to contact for each individual thing? Do you have bookkeeping in place? Are your maintenance people in-house? Like really understanding like the business on a deeper level than just like, oh,
what can I get for this rent? And how do you, like, how do they pay? And like,
yeah, like just putting a property on Zillow. It's like we're all doing that. Like our properties are on Zillow. Sterling's properties are on Zillow. Every competitor who's in town, they're all using the same. There's no marketing website that one company's using that nobody else is using, at least that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Are you saying there's no like magic formula that we're going to talk about today? You're gonna share the secret sauce to your success, man?
I don't think so. Because I would say we've been on dozens and dozens of these management consultations, and it usually is obviously no one call is the same. Sometimes you get on a call and you're like, I'm nailing this, like this is going to be somebody we work with long term, and sometimes you're like and then but I would say a lot of time it is kind of the same 10 to 12 questions. But yeah, I would say people should be asking more about like what you're doing as a business owner.
So I love that. I think that's great advice. And I think that's great for people to know that too. Cause that's what I want to know is like, what's the longevity of what's going on here? So if you're, if you're at 250 doors now and your goal is just to get to 300 and that's it, like, and if I want to keep pushing, like we're probably not going to fit. You might do a great job, but we're probably not going to fit long-term and stuff like that. So I think that's great advice. So what do you, so one of the things that I've been impressed with you with, because like I said before, like property manager is the thing that I don't want to do. That's like my least favorite thing. And I would say one of those things too with this is, when you're talking to that property manager, especially the owner and things like that, I'm looking for, I think some great advice for people out there that are interviewing. Make sure you're finding somebody that like enjoys property management. Like when I sat down with you, like I talked to Isaac about property management, like this dude's a little nuts. Like he likes property management. He's enjoying this. Like what's going on? So I think there's a level of that's important as well. So
absolutely.
I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about some of that business stuff as you brought it up and things. So I think that's something because you've grown your company pretty quickly and things. So what's some advice? And I see some other investors doing this as well, whether they're doing property management or they're doing wholesaling or fix and flip or whatever. We're just buying properties and they're all of a sudden they're growing a team and they went from like one person doing deals and now they have a business and stuff. So any tips or like any advice you have for people that are in that boat now of just like, hey man, now I have a real estate business. I need to try to figure this thing out and grow with this or try to do this thing. So just as a business owner, any advice or any tips for somebody they're in that position now? We're like, oh man, I have a business. I got to start thinking like a business person.
I would say don't do anything that you aren't good at. So, like if you have a real estate business, you probably have 2 or 3 people you work with. If you have 10 houses, you probably have somebody who collects your rent. You probably have somebody who does your maintenance calls. You might have somebody who does your books. You might have somebody who does phone calls. Like, don't even try to do something that you stink at. Like, I know personally, I stink at bookkeeping. So I don't even try to do it. I'm not great at, talking on the phone about sort of day-to-day stuff. I'm good at like going to lunch with people and picking up business. That's what I'm good at. So I want to just do that. So if you're an investor and you're good at underwriting deals, spend all your time doing that. And if you're good at coordinating jobs and getting them done, like spend your time doing that. So I would say like there's always this like thought that it's like you should work on your weaknesses. Like I just disagree with that. Like I don't think you should do that at all. I think you should, obviously if you're good enough at your strengths, you will be making money from it, hopefully. So if you're good at making money, which I feel like that should be something you're good at if you're a business owner, if you're good at that, you should be able to pay people to do the things that you're not good at. So I would say don't work on your weaknesses, like just like triple down on your strengths and just, get even better at that, and then find people who are good at what you're not good at. Because I mean, I know what I'm good at, and what I'm good at essentially is making money and growing a business. What I'm not good at is like writing stuff down, training, bookkeeping, maintenance coordination. I'm good at leasing, but all those things I just have other people do. And obviously you do have to get to a point like financially where you can afford that. But if you're good enough at your strengths, you'll be able to get there. So that's what I would, that's what I always suggest to people. And get a business coach. So,
Yeah, that's some great advice right there. I mean, the business coach thing is, so if you want to act like a business, then you need, every good business has business coaches. They're investing money into coaching and mentorship and things like that. I think that's great advice. But I want to come back to what you said of like, don't spend time working on your weaknesses. Like hire that stuff out. Like if you have a legit business, like spend your time doing the things that you enjoy doing and that you're good at, and your day is going to go great. Like you're going to enjoy your day. You're going to have fun working when you're spending time and trying to improve those weaknesses or fix those things or whatever it is. Like your day's it's going to drag on. You mentioned before, like sometimes you're like, you work 80 hours this week. A lot of the time it's probably flew by because you're just making connections. You're doing what you're good at. You're doing what you enjoy doing and stuff. So if you're doing 80 hours of stuff of working on your weaknesses, that's going to be a long week. So,
and it's physically impossible to do that and also run the business and do it well. Yep. You can't do it because I mean, it's like if you're spending, let's say out of those 80 hours, you're spending 20 hours on, like if you're me and I suck at and I'm not good at, or I suck at and don't like doing bookkeeping.
Yep.
That's 20 hours that I could spend doing something I like and doing something I'm good at to continue to grow the business. So it's just like, if you're doing that, like you're setting yourself up to fail, and you're never going to be caught up. You're always going to be behind. So
yeah. I think a lot of people, kind of get stuck in that of like, it's whether it's sometimes people can be stubborn with it, but also I think people try to like save money by doing some of that stuff. Sometimes it's just not worth it. Like it's not worth, if I buy a house tomorrow and I'm renovating it, it's not, yes, I can go paint it. I can do that, but it's not worth me going to spend the 2 days painting the whole house versus hiring out. My time is, I can make more money doing other things than painting the house and saving money on that. So same thing you mentioned with bookkeeping, your time's more valuable than spending time on that.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of put a cap on like, what is my time worth?
Yep.
Whether it's, you could make an argument that your time is worth $500 an hour. And, because you could close a deal and make $50,000 and not spend much time on it. It could be even worth more. So you should probably look at it from the standpoint of, what do I think my time is realistically worth? What would I pay somebody else to do this job? And a lot of the time there is a massive discrepancy where it's like, if I think my time is worth $150 an hour, I should not be doing a job that I could probably hire somebody and pay them 20 or 25 or even 50. Like it's, and sometimes it's just the reality. You're going to have to jump in as a business owner, but you want to keep that to a minimum, I would say. And yeah, there is a money thing where people are cheap and they want to save every penny they can. I get that. But I think you'll find that I've found every time I hire somebody new and I am away from the business a little bit, it's like magic. Every time we just get new business from somewhere else because I'm more freed up. So it's just a time versus money thing. But I would say time often is more valuable.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the biggest things that one of the best pieces of advice that I got was basically you want to hire when you're at 80% capacity. If you wait till you're at 100% capacity to hire, you're too late. Like you don't have time to train them correctly. You're missing the boat and stuff like that. So when you're at 80% capacity of anything, whatever it is, that's when you want to hire for that position or bring somebody on to help you or whatever that may be. So Yeah, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to, what's some from whether from the property management side or just the business side in general, what are some of the things that people, what's some of the things that people don't know? So what's something that people, kind of the behind the scenes stuff of just like sometimes, when you're that landlord and you're looking at like, oh man, I'm going to hire Isaac and Piedmont, and they're doing a great job. Like they should be able to handle this, do this. And it all just seems like, yep, I'm getting my monthly statement, weekly statement, whatever it is. What are some of the things that they don't necessarily know about what all you're doing on a day-to-day basis, or what's all involved to manage these properties to be successful?
I would say how much juggling I personally have to do as far as understanding, like I would say management is a very difficult business to run, not because of, I mean, people might think, oh, it's the tenants, or oh, it's the maintenance, or it's the leasing, or it's the marketing, or whatever. I would say the hardest thing is there's so many random things that happen throughout a day, and it's kind of hard to say. I would say it took me almost 6 months to realize, like, okay, this is what everybody needs to be doing. It was really hard for me for a long time to truly define, like, this is what we have 6 employees. So this is what Abigail should be doing. This is what Shelby should be doing, et cetera, as opposed to saying like, okay, this random thing just came in. I guess I'll have Abigail deal with this.
Yeah.
And then it took a long time to realize, like, no, okay, she needs to be responsible for this. He needs to be responsible for this. So I would say just the juggling you have to do as a business owner to really make it efficient, as opposed to just like, because it's not like wholesaling, which I've done that too, where wholesaling, it's very, I won't say it's repetitive, but it is sort of the same premise day to day, where you're trying to identify an undervalued asset that you can sell at a good, and make some money on, and in a sustainable way, in a house that maybe hopefully you won't have to sit on for very long. So it's kind of the same sort of idea day to day. I also have a brokerage, and the brokerage is like, okay, we're in the business of selling houses, and we're in the business of getting houses for buyers. Management, it's just so random. Like no 2 days are the same. So, we might have one day where it's like, we're just putting out fires left and right. And then some days like today, fairly smooth.
Other than internet issues, right? So you had to have some kind of obstacle to that.
Yeah. So like, I feel like just all the juggling I have to do as a business owner to make it run efficiently, because people reach out to us, they're like, oh my God, you guys are awesome. And, like, as I'm sure other people who run management companies feel the same way. They're like, yeah, but do you know how much like work it's taken to get
yeah. Thanks for that compliment, because today's been ridiculous. And I've done like 3 issues I didn't know were even possible. But
yeah. So just the juggling of roles, really truly defining that has been a real challenge. And like people always also look at me and they'll say, oh, you guys do a great job, and oh, you guys have grown so much, it's so amazing. Which, I mean, it is. Like, I did not anticipate this happening at all. So a result of that is I've had to completely pivot my mindset. I've had to pivot. My expectations have changed in terms of my expectations for myself as well as for my employees. So it's just been, and when you deal with that, you just have growing pains. Like there's no way around it.
Yeah.
So I would say just growing pains, balancing roles, and juggling all those things you have to juggle as a business owner.
Yeah. So I love it, man. That's all great stuff. Really appreciate your time, and really appreciate all the insights you have on here and stuff like that. Just have one last question for you, and we'll get you out of here. And that's just, do you have any other, like, just any last little tidbits or anything else that you want to share, whether it's from the property management side or just from the business side or anything like that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, I would always, like I was saying earlier, like anybody who even doesn't have a business yet, like, I would recommend hiring a business coach. Like, and I didn't come from that background of like, going to business school and being raised by entrepreneurs necessarily. So I would say that's something that has been incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah.
Because, I like people, like my staff, even they make fun of me about how bad of a trainer I am. so having a business coach has been like training me to train people essentially. Yeah. So I would, it's something I would say I take great pride in, is like when you become a business owner, or even when you become a landlord and you start feeling like you're all that, like never get to a point where you're like uncoachable, where it's like you can't take feedback. Like I had an investor reach out to me last night, and he signed a management agreement with us, and we already manage like 5 or 6 doors for him. And yeah, he emailed me back. He was like, just some light feedback for you. Like, I think it would look way more professional if like your logo was in your management agreement. And if you took out, like, DocuSign sometimes fiddles with the management agreements. It puts all these weird like envelope IDs in the thing. And I've been using the same template for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So I've just never taken it out. So I would say just I would advise everybody, like, be coachable.
Yeah.
Take advice, like listen to people who've been doing it longer than you. You're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah, I would think. I know. I think that's great advice, because I think we all suffer from that. I know that's in my past life. That's exactly how I was. I tried to like, I got it taken care of. I'll figure it out on my own. Like, I'm a pretty smart guy and stuff. But I think you bring up a really good point there too, of like, not even just with the coaching, but talking to the people, like whether it's your clients or your customers or whoever you're working with, make sure you're asking for feedback from them. Like, what are some of the things that we can do to help out, or what would you prefer? Even something as simple like that. Like, hey, if this is our agreement, like, you guys have any suggestions for me, or would it make it better anyway? Like, little things like that can go a long way. And that's sometimes where you can get some of the best ideas. Always listen to your clients, always listen to your customers. So
yeah, and it's like, we do a good job, but is are we getting everything right 100% of the time? No. So like, you have to be willing to listen when somebody says, oh, you guys did this and I'm not happy with that. Or you guys didn't do this thing, or could have done this a little better. Then we'll certainly listen to that. And I would say it has to start from the top, where it's like people learn from what the owner of the business is doing. If the owner of the business thinks he knows it all, then so are the employees. You're modeling for them.
Exactly. So very true. Very true. So Isaac, man, appreciate you. If somebody wants to learn out more about just you in general, or more about what Piedmont's doing or anything like that, where's the best place for them to go, or how can they get in contact with you? What do you suggest for that?
So you can call the office anytime. 317-300-5405 is our phone number. Our website is just indypropertymanagement.com. So it's INDYpropertymgmt.com. When I started the company, the website name was Piedmont Indy, and then Indy Property Management became available. I was like, that's kind of like.
I was just gonna ask, how did you get that, man? Good job there.
That's like that's what we are. Yeah. So just get in touch with us through there. You can email me, Isaac@PiedmontIndy.com. So those are the best ways to get in touch. And yeah, we're always happy to get on the phone and just talk. Even if we don't end up working with somebody, I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. If you need anything from me, or have any questions, or need anything, any tips that you even want for us on, as I'm talking about, listen to your clients, listen to your customers. I want to know from our listeners out there, what are some topics that we haven't covered yet that you'd love to hear covered on the Indy Investor Pod? Love to help you out in that way. So if you need anything from me, just reach out to me to Brian@simplewholesaling.com. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode, and we will see you next time. Take care.